Hello. On April 23rd, Mars, the planet of conflict and strife, enters Cancer, the zodiac sign of home, hearth, and family, transforming your private sanctuary into an occupied territory. Hello, I'm Christopher Renstrom, your horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the upcoming transit of Mars through the zodiac sign of Cancer. Now, your first reaction is probably going to be private sanctuary transformed into occupied territory. That's what I've been living for the past year and a half. We've all been living with stresses here in our home, here in our houses, under lockdown, sort of being forced to live with loved ones on a 24/7. Usually they go to work or they're off to school or something like this. But with everyone having been under lockdown, we've kind of seen not only our home lives transformed into an occupied territory, but more like life with loved ones is analogous to life with a cellmate. Anyhow, Mars entering the zodiac sign of Cancer doesn't mean that there's going to be more of the same. Usually, Mars in Cancer reintroduces some sort of long-standing conflict with a family member. Maybe it's with a difficult sibling or a querulous in-law or a bleating black sheep. These, again, are things that aren't particularly anything new, but Mars will give them a much more agitated or rancorous feel. Mars in Cancer also gives us an opportunity to sort of reflect and to think about our habitual responses to family members. Family is such an important and complex thing. I mean, it's something that we all take for granted, okay? Because these are the people who raised us or that we were raised with, in some regard, or that we are raising. And so we see them every day and we think that we know them pretty well, and we may, but what's also very difficult about being in a family is that it's your familial relationships, your family relationships that are the hardest to change. Now, one might say, well, that's because of habit, or you've been given a certain role, by siblings when you were the age of 3, or you're known as the family member who's really successful, or you're known as the family member who fails at everything he or she tries. But what makes it so difficult, why family relationships are so difficult to change, is that not only are there, seated expectations and familiar assumptions, but there are also roles that we feel ourselves playing into. We might be someone very different in our marriage or in our work life or with our friends than we are with family. And because family is connected to memory, and memory, of course, is the moon, which rules over the zodiac sign of Cancer, we may feel ourselves sort of like automatically plugging back into old and familiar behaviors. So something to think about over the next few weeks that Mars is in Cancer is kind of like, how can we help a family member out? Okay, it's pretty much, how can we help a family member out who's struggling? The family member who's always this problem or always connected to difficulty or walking away from another failed relationship or walking out on another job or commitment. Are there ways that instead of giving advice or getting angry or frustrated with this person, are there ways that we can listen with fresh ears and with an open heart and a compassionate mind? That may be something that you really want to pay attention to in the next few weeks as Mars is making its way through the zodiac sign of Cancer. Is there any way that you can help with a family member changing, or saying that they want to change, to be supportive and in their corner, rather than saying, I've heard this before and this is what's typical, or this is what you always do, kind of going against the habitual response and seeking out something new and different. Mars is in its fall in the zodiac sign of Cancer. Basically, it is at home in Aries because it's direct and locks horns and can be combative. It can butt heads in Aries. It's exalted in Capricorn, where it can climb over people that get in its way. Okay, so Aries and Capricorn are very much in keeping with Mars's direct, in your face approach. Okay, that changes when Mars is in Libra, and that changes when Mars is in Cancer. Mars in Libra often finds itself forced to work in a partnership that it would rather not have to work in. In other words, it's a partner or someone else who kind of like crimps their style or brings down their game. But Mars in Cancer is interesting for a couple of different reasons. The first is that Cancer is a zodiac sign that does not approach things directly. Like the crab that it's named after, it will take the circuitous route. It will go around a situation and then gradually close in and get its prey, okay, which is not typical of Mars. Mars is more like goes after something. And then Mars is also kind of a little bit uncomfortable in Cancer because Cancer is lunar ruled. It's ruled by the moon. It's ruled by the moon and that time of night. What's interesting about that is Mars is always heated, okay, and that's why it rules, for instance, temper tantrums and fevers. But the moon, interestingly, it's the planet that comes out at night. It lowers the temperature of the heat of day. The moon rules willow trees, which contain salicin, which has been a source of pain relief since antiquity. And it's salicylic acid, which we find as a main ingredient in aspirin, which is what we take to relieve ourselves of a headache. So Mars in Cancer, which wants to be feverish and direct, finds it being muted or calmed or cooled down under the influence of the moon. So this can cause a kind of resistance in Mars. This is why it feels it's at fall, that it's, that it's not, as heated, hot, direct as it wants to be. And this may be something that you find affecting your relationships. If you're used to being very, direct and driven, you may find yourself a little bit more timid or cool, or maybe even standoffish. Or you may be coming across people who you have a feeling are going around the point or taking a circuitous approach to a topic, or whom you feel are moving back away from you rather than toward you. And these are things to pay attention to with Mars in Cancer. People might not be as quick to argue with you. People might not be as upfront. People may take a more circuitous approach. That might be connected to something like saying no. Maybe you're dating someone and the person keeps making excuses and you keep getting more insistent. And so maybe it would be a good idea to be like, well, maybe this person's trying to like say no and I'm not getting it, or maybe you're trying to make a sale or pitch a deal and you're getting these evasive answers. These are things to look for with Mars in Cancer, because it may be people's way of trying to get out of a confrontation or get out of telling you no or making you feel bad. And perhaps the more insistent you are with trying to get the answer, the more evasive they become. And so you might actually save yourself a lot of aggravation by saying, hey, maybe you're not like so into this, or you're not really sold on this idea, and allowing the person to get out of a situation, to be more permissive. Again, that would be respecting the way that Mars is operating in the zodiac sign of Cancer. And the final thing that I want you to sort of keep an eye on is how reactive you may be to situations. And reactive isn't like, oh, I'm mad or whatever, but you might be like, oh, I'm so mad, so I'm going to pick up my things and leave. It's like if you're in an argument with a spouse, it's like, this is the same argument we're having before and I'm going to leave, or I know that I'm not wanted here, so I'm going to pick up my things and leave, or I'm picking up my toys and leaving. Okay, this idea of I'm picking up and leaving is a very Mars and Cancer type of thing, because it's very reactive. Mars and Cancer is going to heighten your sensitivity towards rejection, or rather your fear of rejection. And it's going to heighten your sensitivity towards your fear of disappointment, that someone might be disappointed in you. And sometimes what a Mars in Cancer can do is do the preemptive strike. In other words, I'm going to reject you before you reject me, or I'm going to register my disappointment with you before you can register your disappointment with me. And so this is a kind of combative dynamic that can come up with Mars in Cancer. The thing though, when you have Mars in Cancer or when you're responding to a Mars in Cancer energy, is that you aren't going to be very successful at saying that what you just left was okay. In other words, you may pick up your things and leave, but you'll be full of great remorse and sort of thinking, that wasn't the best way of handling it. And then you'll also have the idea of like, I'm going to have to face that person again. And what am I going to say? So, ultimatums are great when you can fire them off in the moment and spin on one heel and leave in a huff, and slam the door closed. But the Mars in Cancer is that moment after you slam the door closed and it's like, okay, what am I going to do next? Or I have to see this person again, or so that's something that you may also want to be very sensitive to as well. The other thing is that Mars in Cancer has no problem walking away from a challenge. So if you feel like you're up against something that you feel is too big for you or too much for you to take on right now, feel free to walk away from it. That doesn't mean dismiss or neglect it, but walk away from it. Maybe you need some time to think about it. Is this something that you really want to take on? Is this confrontation really worth it? Is this a fight that maybe you want to throw in order to win the war? Okay, these are not typical Mars expressions. Mars wants to, take something and seize it and vanquish it and win. So the idea of actually walking away from something and really considering it and thinking about what you're up against, that's a very Mars in Cancer sort of impulse, and I would strongly recommend that you follow it. So for those who aren't used to Mars in Cancer, you may be introduced to some different ways of confronting and getting around the idea of confrontation and maybe achieving your goals through a different manner. And for those of you who are very much used to Mars in Cancer, like you have Mars in Cancer in your chart, this is going to be a period of time in which you kind of feel like you're being validated for the actions that you're taking and for the decisions that you're making. Meanwhile, Mars will be in Cancer until June 10th. So we have all of that time to work on our precious Mars in Cancer skills.